Breaking into the professional tracking scene in Nashville is tough, and one single mistake in the engineer's chair can ruin your chances of working with that client again. It's fast-paced, it's daunting, and quite frankly, it is so much fun. So today I'm sharing with you how I prep for Nashville-style sessions and a few things you can do during the session to make things run smoothly. And I'll also be including a downloadable checklist that will help you get ready for your next big session as a hired engineer. Chungmasa Hoshifo at DShack. I am a record producer and engineer in and around the Nashville area. I've been full-time as a freelance engineer for about 2 years now and have worked on various projects of sizing from indie records to Warner Brother records to other smaller labels to going out on the road and working with live event bands. And along this journey, I started teaching with the Apprentice Academy, where some of the people that are students there asked me to put together a checklist of what do I do when I get into studio or when I'm prepping to go into studio for big Nashville-style sessions. Now, if you don't really know what a Nashville-style session is, let me briefly describe that so you have an idea of the context for each of the decisions and each of the things on this checklist. A Nashville-style session is where a producer will bring in hired gun musicians, a lot of times from the union, but not exclusively, to perform on songs. These guys come in and their entire job is just to be studio professional musicians. These guys listen to songs, and usually from the first time they've ever heard it to the second pass of them trying to record the song, they've got something that is radio ready. You know, sometimes it takes a third pass, sometimes it takes a fourth pass, but at that point, wow, you know, there's something different about that song that's extra challenging. Typically on the second or third pass of a song, they've got it pretty well locked into the arrangement that the song needs. So because of that, the sessions are very fast-paced. Now, typically it's comprised of a drummer, a bass player, a keyboard player, an electric guitar player, and sometimes a utility guy. The utility guy will have anything from acoustic guitars to mandolins to bouzoukis to fiddles to any kind of utility instrument. And these sessions are typically 3 hours long. So you book them for the amount of time and you get through however many songs you can get through in that given time. Typically that's 3 to 4 songs, sometimes more, sometimes less. I've personally engineered many triples, which are 3 of those 3-hour sessions back to back to back, and we'll push through and get anywhere from 8 to 12 songs done in a day. And those sessions cover all of your basics, right? You have all the basic rhythm instruments and you have some melody going on. Now, most of these sessions are not meant to be the final record. You usually bring in and do overdubs, and you overdub vocals, and you record other melodic parts and specialty parts later on, but this gets you the majority of the way there for a lot of your productions. But because these sessions are so big, it's really important, especially as an engineer, to be ready, to be prepared for what you're getting yourself into. I know the first time I sat in that engineer's chair, I was nervous. I was such a nervous wreck. But at this point, I've been doing them for a few years, and it's a lot less anxiety-driven. They become a lot of fun, and as long as you have your knowledge, your skills, your tools down pat, everything can go off just fine. So to help us understand what goes into these sessions, I've broken it down into 3 different categories. You've got pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is all of your planning. It's all of your contact and communication prior to ever setting foot in the studio, prior to ever actually working with the artist. It's the part that's all the theoretical getting ready and learning what tools you have at your disposal. Really, the 3 things, if I were to categorize it, that are really, really important in the pre-production for just an engineer, and we're not talking producers here, for just an engineer, is you need to know the schedule, you need to know the scope, and you need to know the session tools that you have available. Schedule's pretty self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised how often that gets messed up. Somebody says, oh, hey, we're doing a 10 o'clock, but really it's 2, and suddenly you're not prepared enough, or you don't know when something is happening and you show up at the wrong time. So make sure you have clear communication with everyone involved, especially the producer who you're working for. The scope is also important. You need to know how many musicians are there going to be. Is it your typical complement, or is there maybe something a little different for that particular session? You need to know how many sessions you're being booked for. Is it 1 session? Is it a double? Is it a triple? Is this multiple days worth? You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. And the last of those being the session tools, you need to know what the studio has available for you to use. What are the tools that you're going to be making this record with? There are many times where I'll maybe bring in personal microphones or personal equipment to sessions, but a lot of your big studios that are doing these kind of sessions have an amazing mic locker and they've got great rooms, and so you don't necessarily need to. But what you do need to know is you need to know what the tools they have there are. For instance, do they have enough condenser or dynamic mics to fit whatever record you're going to go be a part of? Are you wanting to use ribbon mics? Well, then you should check into that. What about the console? What console is being used? What version of Pro Tools do they have installed? That can change a few things. And a really big one is, does everything work? Now, a lot of times you can find equipment lists on their websites, what monitors they have, what console do they have, what mics do they have. But what is often not on there is what is out of order. It's a really, really big, important task of an engineer to know what are you actually going to have. So what does that mean? That means you need to call the studio ahead of time and figure out, hey, does all 48 channels of this 48 channel console work? No? Oh, only 12 of them work? Oh, that's going to massively impact your session. Or a personal story of mine, I showed up to a session at this brand new small studio and was doing a pop punk record with 100-something tracks already, and we're going in to do overdub some guitars. And when I get there, I find out that the studio had Pro Tools first, which limits you to 8 tracks, 12 tracks, something like that. And I'm only finding this out when I'm able to get into the studio, which was only half an hour before the artist was supposed to get there. So I had to bounce down all of these 100-something tracks into submix after submix after submix and leave extra space for new guitar tracks just to run the session. That was a nightmare. And I thought I'd ask plenty of good questions prior to leading up to the session of what does he have? What kind of inputs does he have? What kind of, A to D? What kind of microphones? What kind of outboard, equipment? I even asked what version of Pro Tools he had, and he said it was the current one. He was on the subscription plan. But what he didn't tell me was that subscription plan was Pro Tools Intro, not Pro Tools Studio or Ultimate. So don't be like me. Don't find yourself in that predicament, and ask everything, even if it seems obvious. Ask what is available and what is still in working order. Now, if you've made it this far and you find any of this stuff beneficial and helpful, make sure you check out the full documents. It's a free PDF. I don't even ask you for your email. Just download it right there in the description, and it can really help you out. And if you find that this checklist is missing something, let me know down in the comments. We'll add it to it. Now, once we get into production, which is the second phase, there's a couple different subcategories we can kind of talk about, right? There's the physical setup, there's your digital and DAW setup, and then there's also the actual running of the session itself. I'm personally a fan of starting off with setting everything up physically. That way, when you sit down at your computer, all you got to do is click a bunch of buttons and everything should be there and should work. So setting up for the session looks like setting up your mics according to the input list you should already have based off your conversations with the producer and what kind of musicians you'll have, and patching that into the system. That looks like setting up talkback microphones, like setting up headphone mixes for everybody and making sure everyone has control over their individual mix. And along with that, if you're using headphone boxes, make sure they're labeled. Your musicians will really appreciate knowing that drums are on 1 and 2 and the bass is on 7, and the bass isn't on some random knob they try to turn later on and they jack up their entire mix. Another thing is line check, line check, line check. I can't stress how important checking every single line is. Once you set up those microphones and the DIs and whatever you're using to record, make sure that signal is actually passing. Now, this is kind of a bleed over thing with your digital and your DAW time frame and that aspect of setting up, but you've got to make sure everything is there and everything is working. I'm a fan of doing 2 things. One, I'll kind of scratch a microphone. I don't like tapping them. That can kind of damage the diaphragm. I'll scratch a microphone, but also it's important to talk into the microphone. Why talk into it and not just tap and scratch it? Well, that's because tapping and scratching, while that shows you signal, it doesn't tell you is the signal actually clean? Is it good? Sometimes you'll sit down and if all you've done is tap a microphone and you turn up the pre and you hit record, you start listening and realize that it's actually really distorted. Maybe it's a bad cable that's going in and out. The tap will go through, a spike of energy will go through, but that doesn't mean it actually sounds good. Another thing is take care of the musicians and the people around you. This is something I can't stress enough. Run power lines for them so that their pedal boards and any amps that they're using already have power right there. They've just got to walk it in, set it down, and plug it in. Set up music stands, get guitar stands out, get things ready and comfortable for them so that all they have to do is walk in and start playing. They don't have to worry about this and that and the other. On that note, their job is not to be twisting knobs. That's your job. You're the engineer. So make their headphone mixes as close as possible to what you think they're going to need before they ever get there. That will make them so happy and make them so much more comfortable and relieve so much anxiety and stress for them when they walk into a new space to know that everything just works. Now, when it comes to setting up for the digital aspect of it, of course, you've got to make all of your tracks. You've got to make sure they're routed properly. And once again, line check, line check, line check. Make sure everything not only is there, that signal passes, that the quality of the signal is good, but also make sure that it shows up where it's supposed to, right? One of the easy things that happens is we end up with the left and the right overheads mixed up because someone didn't understand, is it the left side or is it the right side? For that matter of fact, I'm a fan of saying overhead ride and overhead hat. That way I know empirically which side is which. Same thing with your room mics. Same thing with any other microphone. Make sure it actually shows up where it's supposed to, because again, you don't want to accidentally record a bass channel on what's supposed to be guitar, because that's going to mess you up, and later on you're going to be trying to figure things out and things are going to be mislabeled and it's just a pile of confusion. So just make sure things are correct in the beginning. Along with that, when you're setting up your DAW, which if you're in Nashville working in these kind of sessions is probably going to be Pro Tools, go ahead and pre-describe different groups for your channels, right? Put all your drums in a group. That way you can control them as one. Put your guitars in a group. Put anything that you can put in a group that makes sense. Go ahead and set that up ahead of time. Along with that, go ahead and do some submixes. Have a master channel in Pro Tools already ready to go to feed your main monitors. That makes it so much easier for you. Just dump a left, right out of Pro Tools, and then you're good to go. That is, unless you're using a big format console, and then use that. It's awesome. It's fun. But any kind of internal submixing you could do, especially for drums, is a big thing, because then you can just feed a left-right stereo submix of all the drums out to the headphones and everything's recorded, and you don't have any issues of recording levels being different than playback levels, because you can pre-mix that in Pro Tools before it goes to their headphone mix. Another couple small things that make a big impact is make sure that Quick Punch is already enabled. Sometimes that gets thrown back to your normal record button, and that's annoying when you hit play and then you try to hit 3 and then it doesn't record and you're like, why is it not recording? Well, Quick Punch isn't enabled. If you're doing tracking sessions, you're going to want to live in grid mode, because everything's going to be going by the bar. You're going to be following a chart that says, we're on this measure, we're on this chord, and they're written out in bars. So go ahead and set your grid mode to a full bar each, and that just makes things so much easier. And along with that, this is something I've never really seen anyone else do, but it's probably my favorite thing to do in a tracking session, and that is set the nudge value also to bars and beats and set it to 1 bar. Because anytime you're working with musicians, and we'll talk about this again in a moment, they're going to want 2 bars of pre-roll before you actually record. That way they can, hear the song, get to the tempo, get to the part of the song, all that fun stuff. Don't use the pre-roll function. Use Quick Punch, but instead give them manually 2 bars ahead of where you're going to punch them. The easiest way to do that, in my opinion, the fastest way, is if you have your markers laid, which we'll talk about that in a moment too, find the marker, point in the song. You can use the left and right caret keys, which are also, I think, period and comma, to navigate with the nudge function. So you select the part of the song you want to punch, and then quickly hit the nudge back to, and you're 2 bars ahead. And it's so much faster than trying to guess, okay, how far is 2 bars? Oh, is this the right spot? I don't know. No, it's already empirically just set up nice and easy for you, because Pro Tools is in grid mode for a full bar, and your nudge is in bars and beats mode for also a full bar. And now if you have everything set up and ready to go, once they get there, what's important about making the flow of the session actually go well? Well, first and foremost, these are people you're going to be working with, not just pieces of a machine to make a song or to put out some kind of content. These are real people, so go introduce yourself. Make them comfortable. Give them a brief tour of what the studio amenities are, where they're going to be at, where they're going to sit to play or stand to play. Make sure they're comfortable in the space, and learn their names. I'm a big fan of writing down the names of all of the musicians, and right next to it, okay, we have Bob on drums today, and we've got, Billy on guitar. That way, anytime that I'm sitting down, getting ready to punch a new section, and I hear someone on the overcom or on the talkback say, hey, put me in here, I can say, okay, Bob, we're good to go. Instead of, okay, dude on the drums, right? People like to feel personal, and you're sharing art, which is personal. So be personal, be personable, learn their names. And if you have a hard time remembering like I do, write down on a little piece of paper and put it next to where you're going to be. Write it on one of the charts. Do the same for your producer too. Write down everybody's names, because maybe there's a chance he doesn't know all of the individual musicians' name either if he went through the union. Whoever the session leader is might have brought in someone he doesn't know. And so helping whoever the producer is know who the musicians are is also going to give you some brownie points with your producer. All of this is especially beneficial if you're an assistant engineer and you're going into somewhere like this. That's a job that I often task my assistants with if it's someone I don't know. Even if it's all session players I know, that's something I ask anybody who's assisting me on a session. Hey, go introduce yourself, go talk to them, and write down all of their names and what role they are in the session. And that goes for your musicians, that goes for artists, that goes for artist friends, anybody in the room. And that also kind of pushes whoever is assisting with me to go and make their own contacts too, and to learn their names, even if I already know them. Next, of course, you have to set your preamp levels and make sure you have headroom so you're not clipping anything with your musicians. If everything's already pretty well set and I've got my microphones kind of placed and I've double checked the placement after they've moved their drum kits and they've moved their amps and everything, I always ask them play their loudest and then just play me something. Play me a groove. I don't want to hear just the kick. I don't want to hear just the snare unless I hear an issue in a particular microphone. I want to hear the whole thing. Just start playing. I'll dial stuff in. Give me like 30 seconds and we'll be good to go. That's generally how I approach something like that. And then once it's time to record, once again, give the musicians 2 bars of pre-roll. Usually that first bar is for them to catch the tempo of the song, to hear the click. The second bar is for them to start playing so that the room volume gets back to where it was. Because if you just punch cold, you hear that. You can't edit from a cold punch of no music to suddenly there's a history of music in the room. It feels weird when you're going to edit things and try to mix stuff. So 1 bar is for them to catch the click, 2nd bar is for them to start playing along to it, and then you're punching at the top of the 3rd bar. By the way, that's why on all of your sessions, there's always going to be 2 bars of nothing at the beginning before anyone starts playing. Next is save, save, and save. I cannot stress how often you need to save your session. The worst thing that can happen is for you to do all of this work and all of these musicians play and you didn't save, and suddenly all of that work is gone. If you're working with session musicians and you're working in a big studio and you're paying for all that time, or the producer is, you have literally cost them potentially thousands of dollars worth of material if you did not save. So cover yourself, save your session, just please, just save it. Even if you haven't recorded yet, save your session as a template, as a save as something, so you have a safety to go back to. There was one session where I was really rushed in the setup. We didn't have a lot of time before the musicians got there to get everything ready and going. Everything was going super, super fast. I was able to get everything, just under the wire, and I forgot to save my session before anybody started playing. And I went and was having a conversation with the drummer, making sure everything was good for him. And when I got back, Pro Tools crashed. All of the DAW setup that I had was gone. So we had to stall for a few minutes for me to reset up everything I did digitally, which is not good. Now, in that particular session, we were able to do it smoothly. I don't know that anyone really noticed all that much. If they did, I don't know that they really cared because they were still talking amongst themselves. And I know how to set up what I needed very, very quickly. So really, that only took me a couple of minutes to do. But still, those few minutes are precious, precious minutes when you're in a tracking session. Time literally is money, and that's not something you can afford to waste. Plus, beyond that, if those kinds of things become a habit and become something that people notice, they're going to lose confidence in you as an engineer, and they're not going to want to hire you back. On another note of saving time, if you have, say, 1 Pro Tools session per song that you're working on, a really, really good idea is to, when you create a new session, import your previous session settings. That means your volume settings, that means your pans, your sends, anything that's going on that's not the actual music itself. You don't need the tracks, you don't need the tempo, you don't need the markers, you don't need those things that are specific to the song. But anything that's not specific to the song, you can go ahead and import that into your new session, and that's going to save you a lot of setup time. Plus, it keeps the exact same mixes and the exact same processing for your musicians and their headphones, so they don't have to adjust anything new when you go to a new song. Those are some really quick things that I do every time I'm in a session. Now, once the session's over, there's a handful of really small things you can do in the post-production category, which is our 3rd section, that just make people want to work with you again or make for a smooth transfer of the material and the art that you've created to your producer. First is edit any of your punch points. So if you have a bunch of punches, say on the drums, they needed to fix, 2 bars here and 2 bars there of various points in the song, just go in and add little crossfades. Make sure that the cymbal decay isn't doing something wonky, right? That everything blends and works smoothly. Go ahead and edit those. That way they don't have to do it. Especially if they're going to work in another DAW, you're going to have to consolidate those clips. That way they have a full pass of the entire song, because their DAW is not going to open your edits, if you're using Pro Tools and they're using Ableton. Along with that, go ahead and make a tracking day print of all the songs. It doesn't have to be a fancy mix, just whatever you were listening to the day of, when people were feeling inspired and when everything was going well and everybody's like, man, this is awesome, we love this. Go ahead and make a mix print. Print a copy of that mix, that way they can listen to it and have something to walk away with on day one, even though it's not a final version and never meant to be released. Once again, save everything. And at this point, save a backup. It's a good idea to have multiple hard drives with you. Always be working off a hard drive, a solid state drive when you're in a studio, because the storage on that computer is not yours. And at any point in time, if they want to come in the studio, that is, and wipe everything clean, they can. And that is not on them if that's the only place you have it saved. So save backups, have multiple hard drives, even if one of them is just a little thumb drive that you never reopen again. It's just there just in case something happens. And I also encourage you, once you get home, do another backup. Have 3 copies somewhere on different devices. That way, if your device crashes or if it gets stolen or you lose it, you have another copy of it somewhere else. When you're done with everything and while everything is backing up and files are being transferred on your computer, go ahead and clean the studio. Leave it nice for the next person that comes in. Normalize all the faders and all the pan pots and all your preamps. Get that stuff kind of back to where you found it. While this is going on, it's also a good idea to go ahead and talk to everybody again. You're done with the session, everybody's done playing music, all the stress is relieved. Now you can just go be another human and get their contact information. I'm a big fan of all the musicians you work with, the producers, the artists, everybody that you're around. Go ahead and get their contact information and make sure they have yours. Shoot them a text with your name on it or something like that. Or go back the next day and text them. That way everybody has contact with everyone, and you never know when that can lead to something. That's led to a couple of really cool offers for me over the years. And you never know when you're going to need to call that bass player again to come and play on a new track. Of course, once everything is backed up, everything's saved, you have all of your copies, you got to make sure the producer has their copies too. Because at the end of the day, you're a work-for-hire engineer working for that producer. It's their product. So make sure that they have their product. And last but not least, make sure you get paid. Yes, we do this because we love music, but if this is going to be our profession, if this is going to be our career, then we have to get paid, and we have to pay for rent, we have to pay for food, we have to pay for everything in life that costs money, because they're not going to give it to us for free. So make sure you get paid. In a really rapid fire way, that's what I do for every single session. And there's some other things too. It's down in the checklist. You can check that out. Once again, it's completely free. There's no strings attached. Just download it and let me know if it's helpful to you. If you do find it helpful, please subscribe. That helps me out and encourages me quite a bit. But in that document, there's also on the 3rd page, a few other things that I've listed out there, which are just topics to consider. Everything that kind of goes into a session, big general categories that you have to think of and consider anytime you're engineering with, well, really with anyone, whether it's a Nashville session or not. It's the giant, big picture scope of what goes into a session. And that part's not really meant to be a checklisty thing, but it is something to make you think about, who do I need to be in contact with, what are things I need to consider, and maybe some other things that you have to do to prep for a session that you're involved in. But that wraps up the big picture idea and a lot of the tiny little details that go into every single Nashville style recording session. Again, if you found this useful, please help me out. Hit subscribe. Let me know down in the comments what you find most useful or things you think that I missed in this document. Like I said, I'm happy to add them. This PDF is completely free because I think it's something that can really be beneficial for anyone that's wanting to sit in an engineer's chair in Nashville. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.